Hi, I'm Pastor Moses Day. Welcome to this study on the books of Daniel and Revelation. This study will be presented in a series of videos because there are a lot of materials that I want to cover. Now, let me begin by giving a short introduction to this study. Now, I won't be doing a comprehensive study on these two books. Now, when we want to study Daniel, the book of Daniel, we can look into the life of Daniel. Daniel lived a very colorful life, so we can focus on his life, his faith, and his suffering, and so on. But this is not my purpose. My purpose for this study is to focus on the visions, dreams, and prophecies that Daniel received from God. And he received a lot, right? Now, when we look at those visions, dreams, and prophecies of Daniel, immediately you will notice that they are all mainly about the kingdoms or empires of men. And so the question we want to ask is, why is God showing Daniel these things? What is God wanting to convey to us, his people? So, as I understand it, there are two overarching messages in the book of Daniel. The first message is that God is showing us that he is using these kingdoms of men to help Israel, to assist Israel, to bless Israel, and also sometimes to judge Israel. And these kingdoms of men that are mentioned in Daniel, they are basically located around the Mediterranean Sea, So this gives us the inform to us that these kingdoms of men are not all of them on the earth. These are not all the kingdoms of men there are in the world, in the history of man. Rather that these kingdoms are all located near to Israel, right? Because we know from history that there are also other kingdoms or empires of men located in other parts of the world, okay? So this is the first point. The second message is that we know that Satan wants to reveal himself or manifest himself through the kingdoms of men. His desire is to appear into the physical world, because we know Satan is a fallen angel, an evil spirit, but his desire is to enter into this physical realm, just as Jesus came incarnated as a man. So Satan wants to imitate him, imitate Jesus, and to enter into this physical realm. And one day soon, he's going to do that. He's going to possess a person, a man, whom the Bible called the Antichrist. Okay, so one day Satan will do that. But the question is also, why is he doing that? Satan is very much aware that Jesus will one day return to the earth. And then Jesus wants to set up his millennial kingdom here on earth. And so Satan wants to hinder that. He wants to prevent Jesus from returning back to earth. So that is his ultimate plan. And in this study, we are focusing on this second point of this purpose of the book of Daniel. From looking at the various visions of Daniel, we observe that there are three tracks in which Satan wants to reveal himself through the kingdoms of men. Now, let me put on the screen this slide for you. In this slide, I listed the three tracks. The first track is taken from Daniel chapter 2 and chapter 7. We will find out is that the Antichrist had appeared through the Roman Empire, the revived Roman Empire, and in the future, he will also appear through the 10-toes Antichrist empire. 10 toes or 10 horns, Antichrist empire. Now, you notice here that I've also included Revelation chapter 13 and 17. We have to look at these two chapters in Revelation, because without it, we will not be able to understand Daniel chapter 2 and 7. The second track will be from Daniel chapter 8 and 11. If you bring these two chapters together, we are going to see is that the Antichrist has appeared through the Greek Empire. Now, we know that the Greek Empire is already long gone. But then the thing is that the traces of this empire is still present today. And so we are going to look at it when we come to the second track. The third track is from Daniel chapter 9. In Daniel chapter 9, God gave Daniel a prophecy, a vision prophecy, and it's called the 70 weeks prophecy. Actually, 70 weeks refers to 49 years, because a week equals 7 years. So 70 times 7 equals to 490 years. So God has a plan for his covenant people, Israel, and that plan is for 490 years, a plan. So in that prophecy, we're going to see that at the end of that 490 years, Satan is going to appear through the Antichrist empire. So this is what we are going to be looking at in this in this study. Now let's begin by turning to Daniel chapter 2. Now Daniel was a young man, probably the age of 16 or 17 years old, when together with a group of Jewish people, he was taken from Jerusalem to Babylon as captives by the Babylonian army. And we know that Daniel stayed there until he died. And he lived to be old age, probably around 100 years old. And when he was there taken there, he was selected by the palace, the king's palace, to serve the king. So for 3 years, Daniel went through training, and so that he can serve the king as wise man. Now, on the second year of King Nebuchadnezzar had a dream, and that caused him sleepless nights. So he called his magicians, sorcerers, and his wise men of his kingdom to come and appear before him, to tell him his dream and then to give the interpretation. Unfortunately, they could not do it, and that caused him to be very angry with them. So he ordered all of them to be killed. He is estimated about nearly 400 of these magicians. So Daniel came to know about this matter, and he sent word to the king to tell the king that not to proceed with this slaughtering of his people, these magicians, because he said he was going to pray to his God, and God will give him the interpretation. So the day came that Daniel appeared before the king, and then Daniel was able to tell the king what the king dreamed. Now this itself is a miracle, because the king did not reveal what he dreamed to Daniel. It was God, it was Jehovah God who revealed to Daniel what the king dreamed. So the king must be very impressed with the ability of Daniel. So that must have boosted his faith. So Daniel began to tell the king what the king saw. Let me put on the screen this image that the king saw. Daniel told the king that the king saw an image of a man that is made up of metals. Now the Bible calls it a great image. The Bible says that the king saw a great image. But this man is made of metals throughout his body, and some people call it the metallic man. But the Bible calls it the great image. Anyway, Daniel began to describe to the king. He says, on the head of this man, the head and the neck of this image is made of gold. And then Daniel told him that below this, on the chest and the two arms, it is made of silver. And below that, on the thigh, it is made of bronze. And going down to the two legs, they are made of iron. And then proceeded from the legs, the two legs are the 2 feet. The 2 feet are made of iron mixed with clay. And even the extended out to the 10 toes, they are made of iron and clay. And then Daniel told the king, he says, "O king, you saw a huge stone that came from the sky at a fast speed, and then the stone hit the feet of this image and caused the feet to break, and then to cause the whole image to crumble down, and it break into pieces and then into dust, and a strong wind came and blew this dust away, never to be found. And then Daniel told the king, from this stone arise a great mountain that fills the whole earth. So this was what Daniel told the king he saw. Now let's give the interpretation. That's what Daniel said by giving the interpretation. Daniel gave the king the interpretation. Now in Daniel chapter 2, verse 7 and 8, 37 and 38, let me read for you. Daniel told the king, he says, "You, O king, are a king of kings, for the God of heaven has given you a kingdom, power, strength, and glory." Verse 38, "And wherever the children of men dwell, or the beasts of the field and the birds of the heaven, he has given them into your hand, and has made you ruler over them all. You are this head of gold." You are this head of gold. So let me now put on the screen for you this chart, this table. Now Daniel told the king, he says, this head of gold refers to you, O king. And we know that the king Nebuchadnezzar represents the Babylonian Empire. So therefore, the head of gold refers to the Babylonian Empire, because King Nebuchadnezzar was the first king of the Babylonian Empire. And this Babylonian Empire, it lasted from 606 BC to 536 BC. Then in verse 39, Daniel said to the king, verse 39, let me read, "But after you shall arise another kingdom," see, another kingdom, "inferior to yours, then another, a third kingdom of bronze, which shall rule over all the earth." So Daniel told the king that after you shall arise another kingdom. Excuse me. And we know that this Medo-Persian Empire was the empire that overruns the Babylonian Empire, even though it's inferior. Now, so this chest and arms of silver represents the Medo-Persian Empire. And it lasted from 536 to 330 BC. Now notice that this Medo-Persian Empire is represented by two arms of silver, because the Medo-Persian Empire has two parts: Medes, right? Medes or Medio, Medes on one part, and then the other part is the Persian. So these are actually Iranian people. Today we call them the Iranian people. And Medes and Persians are like what you call it, ethnic groups of the Iranian people. They are the same Iranian people, but they have different ethnic groups. So then after this, on the thigh, on the belly, is represented by this bronze. It refers to the Greek Empire. The belly and thighs of bronze refers to the Greek Empire, because the Greek Empire overruns the Medo-Persian Empire. And the Greek Empire lasted from 330 to 27 BC. Then, followed after this, below the belly are the two legs of iron. And these two legs of iron, we know, represents the Roman Empire. Represents the Roman Empire. The legs of iron represents the Roman Empire, and it lasted from 27 BC to AD 476 stroke 1453. What does it mean? It means that, you see, the Roman Empire has two legs, right? Two legs. So on the western side of the Roman Empire, because the two legs represents the two sides of the Roman Empire, there is the Western Roman Empire and the Eastern Roman Empire. The Western Roman Empire, which have its headquarters or capital in Rome, it actually came to an end in the year 476 AD. But then on the eastern side, or the Eastern Roman Empire, it only came to an end in 1453, when the capital, Constantinople, was defeated by the Ottoman Empire. So we can see that, you know, the Roman Empire, which is represented by two legs, one on the western side, one on the eastern side, both of them came to an end, but at a different date, at a different time. Okay. And then extended from the two legs are the 2 feet. Okay, the 2 feet, which is made of iron and clay, mixture of iron and clay. They are referred to, they represents the revived Roman Empire, or what is today called the Union for the Mediterranean. This lasted from AD 1948 to the time of the rapture. Now, how do I come to identify the feet of iron and clay as the revived Roman Empire? Now, we need to understand that this whole image of this metallic man, it is about empires. The whole part of it, every part of it is about empires. So let me now give you this show you this picture on the screen. This is an enlarged picture of these legs, feet, and the toes. Now the two legs of iron, we know now to be represents the Roman Empire. But when they came to an end, somehow they continue on. That means they were revived. They continue on into the feet. But when they did so, what happened was they began to change form, because now it's not just iron, but becomes iron and clay. And since this whole part of the metallic man represents empires, therefore these 2 feet must also represent empires. And here we are saying that it represents the revived Roman Empire. Now, what I'm saying here, I will be giving you the evidence, or I will be explaining it further in the future, in the next video. But suffice for the time is that this is what it represents. The 2 feet represents the revived Roman Empire. And notice that extended out into the 10 toes, it consists of the same material, iron and clay. Now these 10 toes, or also called the 10 horns, they represent the Antichrist Empire. Now let me go back to the image of the metallic man. Now, what Daniel saw or interpret to the king is that Daniel said the stone that appeared from the sky and traveled at a fast speed and hit against the feet of this great image, this metallic man, and smashes the feet and causes the whole image to crumble and disappear. This great stone that appeared from the sky represents Christ, represents the Son of Man, the Messiah. And we know that from this, what we call the mountain, the stone, it began to appear a huge mountain, and the mountain covers the whole earth. The mountain represents the kingdom of God, the kingdom of Christ. So the kingdom of Christ will eventually encompass the whole earth, and the whole world will come under the dominion of Christ. So this is the first video on this study on the visions of Daniel and Revelation. So this is first track, part 1. Check out the next video, which I will continue with Daniel chapter 7.